Hi, I'm Miss Greaves, and for my share a story, I thought I'd read you, it's really for sort of year 5, 6, slightly longer books. It's the first, well, the chapter's quite long actually, I'll see how far I get. The first chapter of the first book in this trilogy. So the first book is Across the Nightingale Floor. The second book in the series is Grass for His Pillow. And the third book is Brilliance of the Moon. So they're samurai books, ninja books. They're set in ancient Japan. The author, Leon Hearn, she lived in Japan for a very long time, so they're really authentic. And I think one of the best adventure series of the last 10 years. Easily as good as Philip Pullman or the Harry Potter or Patrick Ness. I don't know if anybody's familiar with his series, The Knife of Never Letting Go. For me, these are well up there in that caliber. And the story starts with a young boy whose village is totally destroyed by some soldiers. Everyone in the village dies, his family, and he doesn't really know why he escaped. But we find out that he escaped because he's got ninja skills that he didn't realise he had. The whole trilogy is really his revenge, and it's beautifully done. Anyway, so I will stop this recording and then start another one of me actually reading the book, but I hope you are intrigued enough to want to get copies of it and continue reading after my first chapter. Okay, so I'll just read the first few pages of chapter 1 of Across the Nightingale Floor by Leon Hearn. So like I said, year 5, 6, quite confident readers and people who don't spook too easy either. They're very exciting. So, chapter 1. My mother used to threaten to tear me into 8 pieces if I knocked over the water bucket or pretended not to hear her calling me to come home as the dusk thickened and the cicadas' shrilling increased. I would hear her voice, rough and fierce, echoing through the lonely valley. "Where's that wretched boy? I'll tear him apart when he gets back." But when I did get back, muddy from sliding down the hillside, bruised from fighting, once bleeding great spouts of blood from a stone wound to the head, I still have the scar, like a silvered thumbnail. There would be the fire, and the smell of soup, and my mother's arms not tearing me apart but trying to hold me, clean my face or straighten my hair while I twisted like a lizard to get away from her. She was strong from endless hard work and not old. She'd given birth to me before she was 17, and when she held me I could see we had the same skin, although in other ways we were not much alike. She having broad, placid features, while mine, I'd been told, for we had no mirrors in the remote mountain village of Mino, were finer, like a hawk's. The wrestling usually ended with her winning, her prize being the hug I could not escape from, and her voice would whisper in my ears from the blessing of the hidden, while my father grumbled mildly that she spoiled me, and the little girls, my half-sisters, jumped around us for their share of the hug and the blessing. So I thought it was a manner of speaking. Mino was a peaceful place, too isolated to be touched by the savage battle of the clans. I had never imagined men and women could actually be torn into 8 pieces, their strong, honey-coloured limbs wrenched from their sockets and thrown down to the waiting dogs, raised among the hidden with all their gentleness. I did not know men did such things to each other. I turned 15 and my mother began to lose our wrestling matches. I grew 6 inches in a year, and by the time I was 16, I was taller than my stepfather. He grumbled more often that I should settle down, stop roaming about the mountains like a wild monkey, marry into one of the village families. I did not mind the idea of marriage to one of the girls I'd grown up with, and that summer I worked harder alongside him, ready to take my place among the men of the village. But every now and then I couldn't resist the lure of the mountain, and at the end of the day I slipped away through the bamboo grove with its tall, smooth trunks and green slanting light, up the rocky path past the shrine of the mountain god, where the villagers left offerings of millet and oranges into the forest of birch and cedar, where the cuckoo and the nightingale called enticingly, where I watched foxes and deer and heard the melancholy cry of kites overhead. That evening I'd been right over the mountain to a place where the best mushrooms grew. I had a cloth full of them. The little white ones were like threads and the dark orange ones like fans. I was thinking how pleased my mother would be and how the mushrooms would still my father's scolding. I could already taste them on my tongue. As I ran through the bamboo and out onto the rice fields where the autumn lilies were already in flower, I thought I could smell cooking on the wind. The villager dogs were barking as they often did at the end of the day, but the smell grew stronger and turned acrid. I was not frightened, not then, but some premonition made my heart start to beat more quickly. There was fire ahead of me. Fires often broke out in the village. Almost everything we owned was made of wood or straw, but I could hear no shouting, no sounds of the buckets being passed from hand to hand, none of the usual cries and curses. The cicadas shrilled as loudly as ever. Frogs were calling from the paddies. In the distance, thunder echoed around the mountains. The air was heavy and humid. I was sweating, but the sweat was turning cold on my forehead. I jumped across the ditch of the last terraced field and looked down to where my home had always been. The house was gone. I went closer. Flames still crept and licked at the blackened beams. There was no sign of my mother or my sisters. I tried to call out, but my tongue had suddenly become too big for my mouth and the smoke was choking me and making my eyes stream. The whole village was on fire. But where was everyone? And then the screaming began. It came from the direction of the shrine around which most of the houses clustered. It was like the sound of a dog howling in pain, except the dog could speak human words, scream them in agony. I thought I recognized the prayers of the hidden, and all the hair stood up on my neck and arms. Slipping like a ghost between the burning houses, I went towards the sound. I'll leave it there. A very, very exciting series, and it just gets better and better and better. I would recommend you buy all three, because once you've started, you cannot stop. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope some of you are tempted to buy it and have a read. You won't regret it if you liked the first few pages. Thank you. Bye.